Murder most foul. Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 through 18. Adam and Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. The older Cain was a gardener, and the younger Abel was a shepherd. Adam and Eve's marital conflict in Eden were taken up by Cain, who was outraged at Abel's sacrifice. Sin, Genesis chapter 4, verse 7, enters the Bible for the first time with the outcome of man's knowledge of good and evil. Genesis chapter 3, verse 5, it's been said, sin never stands still. It always continues to grow. The sin against God was inevitably spilled over to man. Abel's sacrifice was acceptable to God, but Cain's was not, and the outcome was foul play and cover-up. Why does God accept one person's sacrifice and not another's? What is the sacrifice of a righteous man? How should we approach delight and dignify him? First, sacrifice your gifts in faith. Genesis chapter 4, verse 1 through 7. Abel's sacrifice was offered in faith, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 4, because he offered fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. In contrast to fruits, animals eat more, grow slow, and require care. Sacrificing any kind of animal requires skill, work, and strength. The younger Abel offered after Cain, but did not follow in his older brother's practice. And he had no idea what God said to Cain. God looked with favor on Abel in his offering, and not on Cain in his offering. The text emphasizing the person before the present, verses 4 and 5. Picking fruits required little effort. Offering first fruits of the soil and not just some fruits did not even enter Cain's mind. Cain's fruit, verse 3, is singular in Hebrew, but Abel's fat portions and firstborn are plural. Unbelief negatively impacted Cain inside, outside, and upside. Cain, verse 5, was not just angry, or angry for just a moment, or angry for the right reason. He was very angry. Inside Cain was an intense, wild, fiery rage that would not die down. On the outside, his face was downcast. The NASB said Cain's countenance fell. Cain did not look good. His jaw had dropped and his face was sour. The upside for Cain was that the Lord tried to talk him out of his rage, verses 6 and 7, even though it was in vain. In the words of Martin Luther, the famous church reformer, you cannot stop the birds from flying over your head, but you can keep them from building a nest in your hair. Dallas Willard, Spirit of the Disciplines, 117. Second, show love for your brother. Genesis chapter 4, verses 8 through 12. Not only was Cain the person characterized by displeasure inside, very angry, his outward relationship with Abel was characterized by dishonesty in the field. And his upward relationship with God was characterized by denial. I don't know, verse 9. God talked with Cain sincerely and seriously, but Cain talked to his brother slyly and sinisterly, killing the younger with his own bare hands. God gave Eve a way out by asking her a question. Genesis chapter 3, verse 13. But he did more with Cain by asking him questions before and after he committed sin. Verses 6 and 10. The Bible used two words in front of the word Abel to qualify the relationship. His brother, Abel. Chapter 4, verses 2 and 8, twice, once each in verse 2 and 8. Furthermore, God hinted 3 times to Cain the identity of the victim. He is your brother Abel. Verses 9, 10, and 11. The only instance Cain used the word brother was to say it sarcastically, scornfully, and shamelessly. Verse 9. Cain's sacrifice was unacceptable to God because his actions were evil. 1 John chapter 3, verses 11 and 12. Now, thirdly, strengthen your hope in God. Genesis chapter 4, verses 16 through 18. God banished Cain to a nomadic life, but the lesson was quickly forgotten as Cain did the opposite and settled down. Genesis chapter 4, verse 16. Man, as usual, was antagonistic to God, egotistic to others' detriment, and humanistic to the core. Cain's children were not better, but worse as they retrogressed from monogamy, Genesis chapter 4, verse 17, to polygamy, Genesis chapter 4, verse 19. Cain's descendants forged a future for themselves by their bare hands. for the better and the worse, for prosperity and perversity, giftedly and godlessly, from poetry, chapter 4, verse 23, to architecture and agriculture, chapter 4, verse 20, from music and arts, chapter 4, verse 21, and to craftsmanship and industry, chapter 4, verse 22. Men were occupied with exploring possibilities, entertaining themselves, and evading justice at all costs, chapter 4, verse 23 and 24. The godly line of Seth, however, called on the name of the Lord, verse 24. Seth was offspring of redemption, the providence of God, and the hope of mankind. In conclusion, the great Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky said, "If God does not exist, everything is permissible. Do not lean on the design of his mind, the desires of the flesh, and the determination of his hands. Only personal faith, brotherly love, and godly hope please God. Have you reconciled with God, neighbors, and strangers?"